See here, we are now standing exactly here. What do we see from here in real, not in the picture? You see this corner. Here is the southern wall of Temple Mount, and here is the western wall of Temple Mount. And this area here, you see, it says WW, Wailing Wall, right here. This very small area is now exposed, and this is a gate here, which is called the Gate of the King, King Herod, and the very great dignitaries, they came through this gate. The gate, of course, is not here anymore, because all the upper courses with the pilasters are not here anymore, just the lower courses are still here. The gate and the on-ramp was used by King Herod, and what do we have from it? Look, you see the corner? You see near the corner, there's a beginning of an arch. This is the remnant of the on-ramp which was used by King Herod to enter. Of course, on top wasn't a wall with the small stones that you have there now. On top was a gate, and that was the gate for the king. Okay, so there's a beautiful on-ramp went all the way down like this. The people came from the upper city from there. That's where the dignitaries and the rich people of Jerusalem lived. And there was also when Jesus came to Jerusalem and he entered Temple Mount, he came from here through this river.
Behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they travelled on for a day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers.
Built this temple, he employed 18,000 masons. The temple was finished. There was the biggest redundancy problem in Jerusalem ever made. It took years. Well, they must have had tremendous ramps. I mean, they built this up from the inside with earth and so on. I've no doubt a lot of it was done from the inside anyway. Well, they were. That was their work. I mean, when Solomon rebuilt all the walls of Jerusalem. I'm not sure, but we're talking about sort of 20 years, thousands and thousands of people doing it. And they all did about one block of stone each spot.
But to produce the cement, that was a very expensive process because you have to take the limestone, burn it under the ground for 10 days, and then the outcome is about a tenth of what you put in. So they knew what it was, but they didn't use it for such a colossal building like this. So what they did here, they just worked on depended on the solidness, on the fact that this is, I think, about 20 tons, that's all. It goes about 5 yards deep. Yes, 5 yards deep.
What's the significance of that feature?
Okay, this, can you imagine how accurate they were, and they always made this frame to make it look nicer. Okay, he also built this pyramidical, which means every course. I brought you here. I want you to come here and see course 7. In fact, the Robinson Arch was also covered. It was only revealed by this British officer Robinson in the 19th century, and that's why it's called the Robinson Arch. All these gates and arches are named after English explorers, and you understand that the whole thing was totally covered. This whole area was totally covered. It was only excavated after 67, and when they revealed these stones, they found this inscription. Now, without this emphasis here, I don't think I would recognize it at all. But once it's emphasized, you can read it very, very easily. And this is the inscription that I mentioned yesterday on Mount of Olives. It says, "Ureitem v'sas libchem v'atzmotam kadeshe." And now I'm quoting from Isaiah 66:14. "And when you see this, your heart shall rejoice, and your bones shall flourish like young grass." But there's something else here. What I quoted now is the verse from the Bible. This verse is a little different. In what way? If you look at it, it really repeats what the Bible says. But there's this word here, and it says, it talks about the bones. There's one letter which is missing here. This one letter changes the meaning from "and your bones" to "and their bones." Is it a mistake? Maybe. Maybe somebody forgot to put it there. Maybe it's not a mistake. Maybe it's done on purpose. Because now it changes the verse, and now it goes like this. "And when you see this, your heart shall rejoice, and their bones shall flourish like an herb, like young grass." What did he mean by that? We don't even know who put it here. We only know that the one who put this prophecy here did it when the temple wasn't there anymore. Because for centuries, Jews couldn't go to Temple Mount, couldn't go there at all, not even as tourists. And they always longed to go there. And for 1 year, in the year 361 AD, it was a time when Emperor Julian decided to let the Jews go back to Jerusalem and build Jerusalem and build the temple again. It was a very short episode. He was assassinated later, and nothing came out of it. But maybe they came here, they were allowed just to come here to visit, to make some measurements maybe. And maybe that was the time when this Jew in the Byzantine period came, in the first century came and left this message here. What did he mean? He said, "At the moment, our bones are not flourishing. But their bones, maybe after we build the temple, maybe at the end of times, maybe in the 20th century, the bones will be flourishing and we'll go back to Jerusalem." So there's a hope here, more than the will to just quote Isaiah. Because you see, you come to Jerusalem now and you see this, it's such a big city now. The temple is not there. You know, we call this time now the era of the third temple. Not because of the building. The building is not there. But the building is only a symbol. Because after 2,000 years of diaspora, of exile, the Jews came back to the Holy Land, and now we're gathering, assembling the Jews from more than 100 countries. They all come here to create, again, a Jewish independence sovereignty, and we're building Jerusalem and Israel again. So, the status quo in the temple is not there, all right, but the third temple time, we think, has come. And by this, I think, this prophecy has come true. Now, I'd like, before we go from here, chorus. Okay, I use the, that's why I think it's nicer. Okay, it goes from right to left, because it has a beeper as well. So you can start from 12 and you go as far as 6.
Sorry, what verses?
From 12 to 17.
Just, you know, in English or Hebrew.
We like it in both.
For thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the glory of the nations like a flowing stream. Then shall ye sow, then shall ye be borne upon her sides, and be dandled upon her knees. As one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you, and ye shall be comforted in Jerusalem. And when ye see this, your heart shall rejoice, and your bones shall flourish like an herb, And the hand of the Lord shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination of the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord.
Before 1967, there was a narrow passage along the front of this wall, but immediately after the 6 Days War, the Israelis bulldozed all the houses, including a plastics factory, and created the huge courtyard that now exists in front of the wall.
And he is reading it, and this is the sign that he is now an adult in the Jewish faith. And it's a great happiness for the family. They come from all over, from America, from Europe, from all kinds of parts of Israel to celebrate their son's bar mitzvah near the Wailing Wall.
Has to recite from memory certain parts of the Torah, and you can see it's a great occasion when the family gather. The men, of course, around him, the women are excluded. They have to look over the fence, and they throw candies and they sing songs about the Torah, and some of them even dance. This is the coming of age of the Jewish lad, and we're very fortunate that our Jewish guide knew this was going on this morning and brought us down here right opposite the Wailing Wall to witness it. It's an absolute bonanza of religious festivity. I can't help thinking of Paul's words in Romans where he said that his people had a zeal for God, and yet a zeal which perhaps was misplaced because it was a righteousness based on the law rather than faith in Jesus Christ. But their dedication is exemplary. Maybe we Christians have got something to learn from that.
Sometimes crowded, sometimes a lot of graffiti on the walls, One of the first ones to build this style, and this is an exception because it is the only one that remains and was not destroyed by the Muslims later on. We have a lot of churches that we have parts that are Crusader, but with a lot of additions and modifications and destroyed parts and so on. Here it was left as it is. Why? Because Salah ad-Din, this great Muslim conqueror, came to expel the Crusaders from here in the year 1187, about 80 years after they've been here, and established their own Crusader Christian state. He came here in 1187, and after destroying the Crusaders in the north, near to here, a very big battle there, he came here and he destroyed all the churches. The only one that he left untouched was this one, because he turned this place into a Muslim school where he ordered to teach the Quran. It was called a Salahiyah, named after him, Salah ad-Din, Salahiyah. And therefore, we have the privilege to see a church that was not even touched. And pay attention to the stucco style of the Crusaders. It's not as fancy and ornate as in the Byzantine period. They didn't use mosaic floors. The decorations were very, very little, and all what they built in general looked like a fortress. It was like an apartheid here. Always a minority here. The Muslims were there.
Things are given of God. This school was established here by the triumphant Lord Saladin.
Back, the facade is Roman. You see it's carved in the rock here and it's built there and it's even plastered so the water doesn't leak, because the limestone tends to, it's very porous and it tends to leak water. So it was all plastered, all the water systems in Israel were plastered. And it was as deep as you see. What you see here is a remain of the last rain. And that's exactly how it was. But of course in those days, there were more aqueducts that utilized the water to this, and of course it was much fuller. When he came here he healed a paralytic. And it's also the name of the place, also it shows, I mean, it's called in Hebrew Beit.
It's in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked.
It wasn't his emblem. It was
I think they look much more like labyrinths, right? Not like full size. So that's how it is.
Turkish gate. Chcesz się lubię lata, nie bardziej na
Considered a very nice area, although it's only flat buildings, it's not really private homes or anything like that, but it's full of gardens and trees and it's very green.
It doesn't actually seem to make a noise.
Oh.
It's making a sort of noise. Yes, I can hear it. I think that's rather lovely, the way you see the valley like this.
And it's owned by the Garden Tomb Association, an English group, and it was bought in 1894 and kept for you to come and have a look at. They've been waiting for you and we're very glad you're here.
Jesus! Oh, look at that. Isn't it glorious?
No, as children we called it love club and I only knew it like this. Marigolds?
No, go and get it. Wonderful.
We're here now at the Garden Tomb, which is the only sacred or religious site in Protestant and private hands in the Holy Land, and as such it lacks something of the clutter and paraphernalia that tend perhaps to overlay the other sites in a way that isn't always helpful. This is a beautiful garden, and here is a 1st century Jewish tomb, almost certainly not the one in which Jesus was laid, because it's not in the right part of the city, but it's certainly authentic in terms of the kind of tomb in which Jesus was laid. And the garden itself just reminds you of the story of Mary Magdalene, how when she first saw Jesus through her tears, she thought he was the gardener. It's a place of great peace and a sense of the power of the risen Christ, and many people find their faith in him really renewed at this site.
Lire le corps de Jésus et le lierre de l'homme.